Elena Grayson remembered the day everything changed. She had been working in the science lab of the research ship Horizon, studying alien plant samples from a distant planet. Life was quiet. Life was safe. She had dreams of discovering something that would help humanity grow food on barren worlds. Then the Lycan warships came. They appeared without warning, dropping out of hyperspace like wolves descending on sheep. The Horizon had no weapons. It was not built for war. Elena watched through the viewport as massive ships surrounded them, their hulls dark and covered with strange symbols that seemed to glow red. The captain tried to surrender. The Lycans did not care about surrender. They boarded the ship within minutes, tall creatures covered in fur with yellow eyes that burned with hunger. They walked on two legs like humans, but their faces were wolf-like, with long snouts and sharp teeth. They wore armor made of black metal and carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Elena hid in a storage closet with her best friend Sarah Holloway. They pressed their hands over their mouths to stop themselves from screaming as they heard the sounds of their crewmates being dragged away. Some fought back. Those ones did not survive. When the closet door was ripped open, Elena looked up into the face of a Lycan soldier. He smiled, showing rows of teeth, and said something in a language she did not understand. Then everything went dark. She woke up in a cage. The cage was made of energy bars that burned if she touched them. Around her were dozens of other cages, filled with humans from different ships. Men, women, even children. All of them had the same look in their eyes. Fear. Hopelessness. Defeat. Sarah was in the cage next to her. Her face was bruised, and her arm hung at a wrong angle, but she was alive. When she saw Elena awake, she reached through the gaps between the bars. Their fingers touched briefly before a guard walked past, and they pulled away. Days passed, maybe weeks. Elena lost track of time. They were given small amounts of food and water, just enough to keep them alive. The ship traveled through space, stopping occasionally to pick up more prisoners. Finally, they arrived at their destination. Corthax Prime. It was a massive planet with a red sky and two small moons. The capital city stretched across the horizon, filled with towers of black stone and streets crowded with Lycans going about their daily lives. Elena saw markets selling. Strange meats, temples with statues of wolf gods, and everywhere she looked, she saw humans in chains. Humans here were slaves. They cleaned the streets, carried heavy loads, and served food to their masters. Some wore metal collars that sparked with electricity if they moved too slowly. Their eyes were empty, like they had given up on everything. Elena swore to herself that she would never become like them. She would find a way to escape. She would find a way home. But fate had other plans for her. She and a group of other prisoners were taken to a massive building in the center of the city. It was round, like an ancient coliseum, and she could hear the roar of a crowd inside. A Lycan with silver fur and expensive robes stood at the entrance, examining each prisoner like they were animals at a market. This was Lord Tyrus, the arena master. He stopped in front of Elena and grabbed her chin, turning her face left and right. He spoke in broken human language, his voice rough and mocking. He said she was small and weak, but the crowd liked to see small, weak things get destroyed. It made them feel powerful. Elena spat in his face. The guards beat her for that. They beat her until she could not stand, and then they dragged her to a cell beneath the arena. She lay on the cold stone floor, tasting blood in her mouth, and listened to the sounds above her. Cheering, screaming, the clash of weapons. The howls of victory. She learned quickly what the arena was. It was entertainment for the Lycans. Prisoners were forced to fight against each other, against animals, against monsters created in laboratories. The crowd bet on who would live and who would die. Winners earned another day of life. Losers were carried away and never seen again. Her first fight came 3 days later. they threw her into the pit with nothing but a small knife. The sand beneath her feet was red with old blood. The walls were too high to climb. Above her, thousands of Lycans sat in seats that rose up toward the red sky, eating food and drinking and laughing. Lord Tyrus stood in a special box, announcing her to the crowd. He called her a sample of the human species, weak and pathetic. He said that watching her die would remind everyone why the Lycans ruled the stars and humans were fit only to serve. The gate on the other side of the arena opened. Something came out. It was a war beast, created by Lycan scientists to be the perfect killer. It was twice the size of a man, with 4 legs and a body covered in scales and fur. Its claws were as long as swords, and its mouth was filled with teeth that dripped with poison. It had no eyes, but it did not need them. It could smell her fear. Elena's hand shook as she held the knife. She knew she was going to die. The beast charged. She tried to dodge, but it was too fast. Its claw caught her side and sent her spinning through the air. She landed hard, the knife flying from her grip. Blood poured from the wound in her ribs. The crowd laughed. They actually laughed. The beast circled her slowly now, enjoying the hunt. Elena tried to crawl away, but her body would not obey. She could feel her strength leaving her, draining away with her blood. Lord Tyrus called down from his box, asking the crowd if they wanted to see the human die quickly or slowly. They chanted for slowly. They wanted to watch her suffer. The beast pinned her to the ground with one massive paw. Its face lowered toward her throat, jaws opening wide. Elena closed her eyes and thought of Earth, of green forests and blue oceans and the smell of rain. Then something happened. A heat began to build in her chest. At first, she thought it was death coming for her. But the heat grew stronger, spreading through her body like fire. Her blood felt like it was boiling. Her bones ached. Her skin burned. The beast paused, sensing something wrong. It sniffed at her, confused. Elena screamed. Not from fear this time, but from something else. Something ancient and powerful that had been sleeping inside her since the day she was born. Something that was finally waking up. She did not understand what was happening. Neither did anyone else. The beast backed away suddenly, whimpering like a frightened puppy. The crowd went silent. Lord Tyrus leaned forward in his box, his yellow eyes wide. Elena's scream turned into something else. It became deeper, louder, more animal. It became a howl. Then she passed out. When she woke up in her cell hours later, her wounds had healed. Not completely, but far more than they should have. Cyril was there, having bribed a guard to let her visit. She held Elena's hand and asked what had happened in the arena. Elena did not know how to answer. She did not know what had happened, but she knew one thing. Something inside her had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. That night, as she lay in the darkness, listening to the distant sounds of the city, she dreamed of running through snow under strange stars. She dreamed of wolves with white fur and silver eyes. She dreamed of a voice speaking words in a language older than humanity itself. The voice said, "You are not prey. You never were. You are the hunter they forgot. And soon, they will remember." Elena woke up with tears on her face and fire in her heart. Her journey had only begun. 6 weeks passed in the fighting pits of Korthax Prime. Elena fought 12 more times. Each fight should have killed her. Each time, she survived. The other prisoners began to whisper about her. Some said she was blessed by the old gods. Others said she had made a deal with dark spirits. The guards watched her with a mix of fear and curiosity. Even the other fighters, hardened men and women who had learned to kill without feeling, kept their distance from her. Elena did not understand what was happening to her body. She healed faster than any human should. Cuts that should have taken weeks to close disappeared in days. Broken bones mended themselves in hours. And sometimes, Late at night, when she was alone in her cell, she could see in the darkness as clearly as if it were day. Sarah was the only one who stayed close to her. Every night, she found ways to sneak into Elena's cell. She brought extra food stolen from the guards and clean cloth to wrap Alana's wounds. She talked about home, about Earth, about the life they would have when they escaped. Elena loved her friend for that hope. But she wondered if escape was possible. The arena was guarded by hundreds of Lycan soldiers. The city beyond was even more dangerous. And even if they somehow got out, they were on a planet controlled entirely by their enemies. Still, she held on to that small flame of hope. It was all she had. One night, Sarah noticed something strange. She was cleaning a cut on Elena's arm when she suddenly stopped and stared. The cut was healing, right in front of her eyes. The skin was pulling itself together, the blood drying and flaking away, new pink flesh appearing beneath. Sarah's hands trembled. She asked Elena what was happening to her. Elena had no answer. She had been asking herself the same question for weeks, but she remembered the heat in the arena, the fire in her blood, the howl that had come from her throat without her permission. She remembered the dreams of white wolves running through endless snow. Something was waking up inside her, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Lord Tyrus noticed the change too. His human entertainment was supposed to die quickly and provide a few minutes of amusement for the crowd. Elena was ruining his business. She kept winning, and worse, she was becoming popular. Some Lycans were coming to the arena just to see her fight. They called her the survivor. They bet money on how long she would last. Tyrus hated her for it. He hated her for making humans look strong. He hated her for making him look foolish. He decided to make an example of her. A message came from the Lycan homeworld. Important visitors were coming to Korthax Prime, diplomats and generals who served directly under the Alpha King himself. Tyrus planned a grand exhibition to honor them. The finest warriors, the deadliest beasts, the most spectacular deaths the arena had ever seen, and Elena would be the main event. She learned about this from a guard who liked to talk too much. He told her she would face 3 opponents at once, all of them veteran fighters who had killed dozens of humans. The crowd expected her luck to finally run out. Tyrus had promised them blood. The night before the exhibition, Elena sat in her cell and thought about death. She was not afraid anymore. Fear had burned out of her weeks ago. What she felt instead was anger. A deep, cold anger at everything that had been done to her. At everything that had been done to her people. She thought about her crewmates on the horizon. She thought about all the humans she had seen in chains on this planet. She thought about the children who had been separated from their parents and sold like property. Her hands shook. Her blood began to heat. She forced herself to breathe slowly. Not yet. Not here. She needed to control this thing inside her, whatever it was. She needed to wait for the right moment. The exhibition day arrived. The arena was packed. Every seat was filled with Lycans dressed in their finest clothes. Banners hung from the walls showing the symbols of powerful families. Food and drink flowed freely. Music played from somewhere above, in a private viewing box. The visitors from the homeworld sat in positions of honor. Elena could see them from the pit, their faces distant, but their presence unmistakable. They wore gold and silver and carried themselves with the easy confidence of those who had never known defeat. And in the center of them sat someone different. A male Lycan larger than the others, with fur so dark it was almost black and eyes that gleamed like molten gold. He wore no jewelry, no fine clothes, only simple black armor. But something about him commanded attention. Every other Lycan in the box seemed to lean away from him, giving him space. Elena did not know who he was, but she felt something when she looked at him. A strange pull, like a compass needle being drawn toward north. She pushed the feeling aside. She had other things to worry about. Lord Tyrus appeared in his box, his silver fur groomed and shining. He raised his arms, and the crowd fell silent. He welcomed the honored guests and promised them a show they would never forget. He spoke about the weakness of humans and the strength of Lycan kind. He called Elena forward. She walked to the center of the pit, her bare feet sinking into the sand. She wore only a thin shirt and pants, both already torn and stained. They had given her no weapon this time. They wanted her completely helpless. The gates opened. 3 Lycans entered the arena. Not beasts this time, but warriors. They wore light armor and carried long, curved blades. They moved with the grace of trained killers. The crowd cheered. Lord Tyrus smiled. Elena stood very still. The first warrior attacked. His blade cut through the air toward her neck. She ducked under it, moving faster than she should have been able to. The second warrior came from behind, his blade aimed at her spine. She twisted away, the metal missing her by inches. The crowd grew quiet. This was not what they expected. The 3 warriors circled her, more careful now. They had been told this human was special. They were beginning to believe it. They attacked together this time. 3 blades coming from 3 directions. Elena could not dodge them all. She knew that. But something in her blood disagreed. The first blade caught her shoulder. It went deep, cutting through muscle and scraping bone. The pain was enormous, more than anything she had felt before. But instead of falling, she screamed. And as she screamed, she changed. It started with her eyes. They shifted from brown to silver, glowing like twin moons in the darkness. Then her skin began to ripple, like water disturbed by wind. White fur pushed through, covering her arms, her legs, her face. The warriors stepped back, their confidence turning to confusion. Alana's scream deepened into a howl. Her body twisted, growing taller, her bones cracking and reforming into new shapes. Her teeth lengthened into fangs. Her fingers stretched into claws. The crowd was screaming now too, but not with excitement. With terror. Within seconds, Elena was gone. In her place stood something else. A Lycan, but not like any Lycan they had ever seen. Her fur was pure white, without a single mark. Her eyes blazed with silver fire. She stood taller than the warriors, her body radiating power that made the air itself tremble. Lord Tyrus dropped his drink. His mouth hung open. In the viewing box, the dark-furred Lycan leaned forward. His golden eyes were fixed on the white creature in the arena. For the first time in centuries, his ancient heart began to beat faster. The 3 warriors attacked out of desperation. It was a mistake. Elena moved like lightning. Her claws tore through armor like paper. Her jaws crushed bone. In less than 10 seconds, all 3 warriors lay dead on the sand. She stood in the center of the arena, blood dripping from her claws, and raised her head to the sky. Her howl echoed off the walls, a sound of rage and pain and triumph that silenced every voice in the stadium. Then she looked up at Lord Tyrus. Their eyes met. She saw fear in his face. Real fear, the kind that makes hearts stop and knees give way. She smiled, showing her fangs. Then she collapsed. The transformation was too new, too powerful for her human body to maintain. The white fur receded. Her bones shifted back. Within moments, she was Elena again, naked and shaking on the bloody sand. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen. Everyone knew. In the viewing box, the dark-furred Lycan stood. His generals looked at him with questions in their eyes, but he ignored them. He spoke a single word, quiet but carrying the weight of absolute command. He said her name, Elena. Then he said something else. He said to bring her to him, not as a prisoner, as a guest. The white Lycan had awakened, and the universe would never be the same. News of the white Lycan spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every planet under Lycan control had heard the story. A human woman had transformed in the fighting pits of Korthax Prime. She had become something that existed only in ancient legends. The prophecy was being whispered in every temple, every council chamber, every dark corner, where people gathered to talk about forbidden things. The White One will rise from the forgotten bloodline. The Pax will bow, or the Pax will burn. Elena knew none of this. She woke up in a bed softer than anything she had felt in months. The room around her was large and filled with expensive furniture. Sunlight streamed through windows made of colored glass. She was clean, her wounds bandaged with real medical supplies, her body dressed in simple but well-made clothes. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then the door opened. Syrah rushed in, her eyes red from crying. She threw herself onto the bed and wrapped her arms around Elena. She said she thought Elena was dead. She said she had watched the transformation from a window in the slave quarters. She said she did not understand what was happening. Elena held her friend tight and said she did not understand either. A Lycan woman entered the room behind Sarah. She was tall and lean, with gray fur and sharp green eyes. She wore armor that looked like it had seen many battles. She introduced herself as Zara Nightshade, warrior of the Alpha King's personal guard. Elena tensed. She was ready to fight, ready to run, ready to do whatever she had to do to survive. But Zara did not attack. Instead, she bowed her head slightly and said she was not there as an enemy. She said the Alpha King himself had ordered Elena to be treated with respect. She said many things were about to change. Elena demanded to know what was happening. She demanded to know why she had transformed. She demanded to see this Alpha King. Zara smiled, showing just a hint of teeth. She said all questions would be answered in time. For now, Elena should rest. The journey ahead would be long, but Elena was done resting. She was done being a prisoner. She was done letting others control her fate. That night, she escaped. It was easier than it should have been. The guards outside her room were not expecting trouble. Elena moved through the building like a shadow, her new senses showing her things she had never noticed before. She could hear heartbeats through walls. She could smell fear and confusion. She could see in perfect darkness. She found the slave quarters and freed as many humans as she could. 30 men and women followed her through the streets of the city, sticking to alleys and avoiding patrols. Syrah stayed at her side, guiding them toward the spaceport where ships came and went every day. They almost made it. A squad of guards spotted them near the outer gate. Alarms rang out across the city. Within minutes, dozens of Lycan soldiers were hunting them through the streets. Elena fought. She did not transform fully, but pieces of the power came to her when she needed them. Claws instead of fingers. Speed that let her dodge bullets. Strength that let her tear through armor. She killed 12 soldiers before they reached the spaceport. They found a cargo ship preparing to launch. The crew was Lycan, but Elena convinced them to help by holding their captain by the throat and explaining what would happen if they refused. Within minutes, the ship was rising into the sky, leaving Korthax Prime behind. The humans cheered. Syrah hugged Elena and called her a hero. Elena did not feel like a hero. She felt like something else. Something dangerous. They fled into deep space, jumping from system to system to avoid pursuit. The cargo ship was slow and poorly armed, but its captain knew hidden routes that kept them ahead of the Lycan patrols. During this time, Elena tried to understand her new abilities. She could transform parts of her body at will now, though full transformation still left her exhausted. She was stronger, faster, and more aware than any human should be. And sometimes, when she slept, she had visions of places she had never been. One vision kept returning. A frozen moon covered in ancient ruins. A voice calling her name. A truth waiting to be discovered. Meanwhile, the hunt for her had become the most important mission in the Lycan Dominion. Alpha King Kale Draven had taken personal command. He led a fleet of warships across the sector, following every rumor and report. His generals did not understand why he cared so much about one human. They suggested letting the local authorities handle it. They suggested focusing on more important matters of state. Kale silenced them with a look. He said they did not understand what they had witnessed in that arena. He said the prophecy was real. He said the White Lycan would either save their people or destroy them, and he intended to make sure it was the former. Zara Nightshade was assigned to track Elena directly. She took a small fast ship and followed the trail of reports and sightings across 3 star systems. She was the best tracker in the Dominion, and she had never failed a mission. But as she hunted, doubt grew in her heart. The prophecy said the White One would be a savior. Why would fate place such power in a human body? And if Elena was truly chosen by destiny, what right did anyone have to capture her? These thoughts troubled Zara deeply. She had served the Alpha King her entire life. She had never questioned an order. But something about this mission felt wrong. Elena's cargo ship eventually ran out of fuel in an empty region of space. They drifted for 2 days before picking up a signal. It was weak and scrambled, but the message was clear. Human survivors needed help. Elena ordered the ship to investigate. They found a hidden station built into an asteroid. It was crude and poorly maintained, but it was defended by automated weapons and shielded from sensors. Inside, they found something Elena had not dared to hope for. The human resistance. Commander Marcus Vane met them at the airlock. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his face from years of fighting. He had been a military officer before the Lycans conquered his world. Now he led what remained of humanity's fight for freedom. He had heard the stories about Elena. Everyone had. He did not believe them at first. He thought they were Lycan propaganda designed to create false hope. Then he saw her eyes flash silver in the dim light of the corridor, and he believed. Marcus explained the situation. The resistance was scattered and weak. They had a few ships, a few weapons, and a lot of desperate people. They had been fighting a losing war for 10 years. Most of them expected to die without ever seeing Earth again. But the appearance of the White Lycan changed everything. If the prophecy was true, if Elena could somehow unite the Lycan packs or turn them against each other, there might be a chance. Elena said she did not know how to do any of that. She said she did not even know what she was. Marcus nodded. He said he knew someone who might have answers. An old scientist who had studied Lycan biology for decades. He lived in hiding on a frozen moon at the edge of known space. The moon was called Erebos. Elena felt a chill when she heard the name. Erebos was the moon from her visions. The voice had been calling her there all along. She agreed to go. Marcus provided a ship and a small escort. Syrah refused to stay behind. Together, they set course for the edge of the galaxy, for a frozen world where the secrets of 2 species lay buried under ancient ice. Behind them, Zara Nightshade followed. And behind her, the Alpha King's fleet moved like a pack of wolves closing in on prey. The hunt was almost over. But the truth was only beginning. Erebos was colder than anything Elena had ever experienced. The moon hung at the edge of a dead star system, far from any warmth. Its surface was covered in ice that had not melted in millions of years. Nothing lived there. Nothing could live there. And yet, beneath the ice, something waited. Their ship landed near a cluster of ruins that showed on no official maps. The structures were made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. They were covered in symbols that hurt to look at, patterns that twisted and curved in ways that made no sense. The old scientist Marcus had mentioned was named Victor Cole. He lived alone in a small shelter built into the ruins. He had been there for 15 years, studying what he had found, trying to understand secrets that most people believed were just myths. When Elena walked into his shelter, he dropped the cup he was holding. It shattered on the floor, but he did not seem to notice. He stared at her with eyes that had seen too much. He said he had been waiting for her. He said the ruins had shown him she would come. Elena asked what this place was. She asked why she had been having visions of it. She asked what she was becoming. Victor led them deeper into the ruins. They walked through tunnels carved into the ice, past walls covered in more of those strange symbols. The air grew warmer as they descended, heated by some source none of them could identify. Finally, they reached a vast underground chamber. The chamber was enormous, large enough to hold a city. And in the center stood a structure unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It was a tower of crystal and metal, reaching up into the darkness above. Lights flickered along its surface. Ancient machines still working after countless years. Victor explained what he had learned from 15 years of study. This place was built by a civilization that existed before either humans or Lycans. They called themselves the Architects, and they had traveled the stars when Earth was still a ball of molten rock. They were masters of genetics, of life itself. They could reshape species, create new forms, build living tools for any purpose, and one of their greatest creations was the Lycan species. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The Lycans were not a natural species. They had been made, engineered. Victor continued. The Lycans were created as warriors, as hunters, as soldiers for a war that had been lost to history. They were given the ability to shift between forms, to heal quickly, to fight without fear. They were perfect weapons, but they were not the only creation. The Architects had made two branches of the same design. One branch kept the transformation ability active. They became the Lycans. The other branch had the ability locked away, hidden in their genes, waiting for the right trigger to awaken it. That second branch became humanity. Elena could not breathe. She felt like the universe had just turned upside down. Victor said that humans and Lycans were not enemies by nature. They were family, two sides of the same coin. The war between them was built on a lie, a forgetting of their shared origin. But the Architects had left a failsafe. They knew that someday the two branches might need to be reunited. So they programmed certain humans to carry a special gene, a marker that would allow full transformation under extreme stress. These humans were rare, born perhaps once in a million generations. Elena was one of them. More than that, she was the first in thousands of years to actually awaken. The white fur was significant. According to the records Victor had translated, white was the color of the original Architects. A white Lycan was not just a transformer. She was a bridge, a living connection between the two species. The prophecy was not religious nonsense. It was programming left behind by the creators. Elena stood in the center of that ancient chamber and felt the weight of history pressing down on her. She was not a freak. She was not an accident. She was designed for this moment, for this purpose. But what was she supposed to do with it? Before she could ask, alarms began ringing throughout the ruins. Victor checked his equipment and went pale. Ships were landing on the surface. Many ships. Zara Nightshade had found them. They tried to flee deeper into the ruins, but there was nowhere to go. Within an hour, Lycan soldiers had surrounded the central chamber. They moved with professional precision, cutting off every escape route. Then Zara herself walked into the chamber. She looked at Elena, at Victor, at the ancient machines around them. Her face showed no expression, but her eyes were troubled. She said she had been sent to capture Elena. She said the Alpha King wanted to see the white Lycan for himself. She said resistance would be pointless. Elena felt the heat building in her blood. She was ready to transform, ready to fight her way out even if it killed her. But before she could move, Another figure appeared. Alpha King Kale Draven walked into the chamber like he owned it. His dark fur seemed to drink in the light. His golden eyes swept across the room, taking in every detail. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who had never met anything he could not defeat. His soldiers dropped to their knees as he passed. Even Zara lowered her head in respect. Kale stopped in front of Elena. They were close enough to touch. She could feel the power radiating from him, ancient and vast. He was over 500 years old, she realized. He had ruled the Dominion since before her grandparents were born. He looked at her with those molten eyes and spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. He said he had searched for her across 3 star systems. He said he had felt her awakening from halfway across the galaxy. He said the moment he saw her in that arena, he knew everything was about to change. Elena asked what he wanted from her. Kale smiled, showing his fangs. He said he wanted the truth. The same truth she had come here to find. He turned to look at the ancient tower, at the machines of the architects. He said his people had forgotten their origins. They had become conquerors and slavers because they believed they were superior. They had crushed humanity because they thought humans were beneath them. But the truth was different. The truth was that Lycans and humans were brothers and sisters, separated by time and lies. Elena watched him carefully. She did not trust him. He had ruled over the enslavement of her people for centuries. His hands were covered in blood that would never wash away. But she saw something in his eyes that surprised her. She saw doubt. She saw pain. She saw a leader who's beginning to question everything he had been taught. Behind them, Lord Tyrus arrived with his own soldiers. He had followed Kale's fleet, determined to reclaim his escaped prisoner. He demanded that Elena be returned to him. He called her property. He said the Alpha King had no right to interfere with legal business. Kale turned slowly, his golden eyes fixed on Tyrus. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. He asked Tyrus if he understood what they had found here. He asked if Tyrus understood what Elena represented. He asked if Tyrus was really foolish enough to speak to his king with such disrespect. Tyrus hesitated. He was cool, but he was not stupid. He could feel the danger radiating from his ruler, but his pride would not let him back down. He said the human was a freak, an aberration. He said the prophecy was a lie told by weak Lycan who wanted to believe humans were their equals. He said true Lycans did not bow to anyone, not even ancient legends. Elena did not see Kale move. One moment he was standing still. The next moment, Tyrus was on the ground, his throat in Kale's hand, his feet kicking uselessly in the air. Kale spoke quietly, but his voice carried through the entire chamber. He said that for 1,000 years, Lycans had believed they were the chosen species. They had conquered and killed and enslaved because they thought they had the right. But the truth was different. The truth was that they had been created as weapons, just like the creatures they despised. The only difference between Lycans and humans was which switch had been turned on. He released Tyrus, who fell to the ground gasping. He looked at Elena again, and this time she saw something new in his eyes. Respect. He said the war between their peoples was built on a lie. He said it was time for the lie to end. He said he did not know how to make that happen, but he believed she did. Then he did something that no Alpha King had done in recorded history. He knelt, not in defeat, not in submission, but in recognition of what she represented. Around the chamber, his soldiers watched in stunned silence. Zara Nightshade's mouth fell open. Even Victor Cole seemed unable to believe what he was seeing. The most powerful Lycan in the galaxy was on his knees before a human woman. Elena looked down at him, her heart pounding. She did not know what to say. She did not know what to do, but she knew that everything had changed, and there was no going back. The image of Alpha King Kale Draven kneeling before a human woman spread across the galaxy within days. It was recorded by soldiers in the chamber and leaked through channels that no one could trace. Every planet, every station, every ship saw the footage. The ruler of the Lycan Dominion, on his knees before Elena Grayson. The reaction was chaos. Some Lycans called for Kale to be removed from power. They said he had gone mad. They said he had betrayed everything their species stood for. Old generals gathered their forces and prepared for civil war. Others believed. They had always felt uncomfortable with the way humans were treated. They had questioned the stories they were told about Lycan superiority. When they saw their king meal, they saw courage, not weakness, and the humans. The enslaved, the broken, the hopeless humans who had spent generations under Lycan boots. They saw something they had never dared to dream of. They saw change coming. Elena traveled to the Lycan homeworld aboard Kale's flagship. She was not a prisoner, but she was not free either. Too many people wanted her dead. Too many others wanted to use her for their own purposes. The only safe place was at the Alpha King's side. During the journey, they talked for hours. Kale told her about his long life, about the things he had done, about the guilt that had grown heavier with each passing century. He had conquered worlds because that was what Alpha Kings were supposed to do. He had approved the enslavement of humans because that was tradition. He had never questioned it until he saw her transformation in the arena. Elena told him about the horizon, about her crewmates who had been killed or enslaved. She told him about the fighting pits, about the humiliation and pain. She told him about Sarah and Marcus and all the humans who were still waiting for freedom. She did not forgive him. She was not ready for that. Maybe she never would be, but she listened. And she began to understand that even monsters could change. The High Council of the Pax met on the homeworld, in a chamber that had hosted Lycan leaders for 3,000 years. The walls were lined with statues of past Alpha Kings, warriors and conquerors who had built the Dominion through blood and fire. Elena stood before them, a small human woman in a room full of the most powerful Lycans alive. Sarah stood behind her, along with Commander Marcus Vane, who had arrived with what remained of the human resistance. Kale sat on his throne, watching everything with golden eyes. The council members were not happy. Some of them had openly called for Elena's execution. Others demanded she be studied, dissected, her secrets extracted, and then disposed of. Very few were willing to accept what she represented. Lord Tyrus was there too, his throat still bruised from Kale's grip. He had gathered supporters who shared his hatred of humans. He stood at the edge of the chamber, waiting for his moment. The head of the council, an ancient female named High Mother Vera, called for order. She asked Elena to speak. Elena stepped forward. She had no weapons, no armor, no army behind her. She had only her voice and her truth. She told them her story. Not the legend that had spread across the stars, but the real story. She told them about being a scientist who loved her work. She told them about being captured and thrown into a cage. She told them about fighting for her life while crowds laughed at her pain. She told them about waking up one day and discovering that everything she knew about her own body was a lie. She showed them the truth. The records from Erebos, translated by Victor Cole into modern language. The genetic evidence that proved humans and Lycans shared the same origin. The history of the architects and their two creations. Some council members refused to believe. They said the records were fake, planted by human spies to weaken Lycan unity. They said Elena was a weapon designed by their enemies. Tyrus stepped forward then. He said the council was wasting time. He said Elena should be killed immediately, before she poisoned more minds with her lies. He said Kale had already proven himself unfit to lead by kneeling before her. He called for a vote of no confidence in the Alpha King. The chamber erupted in shouting. Supporters of Tyrus clashed with supporters of Kale. Guards moved to protect the throne. For a moment, It looked like blood would be spilled. Then Elena transformed. She did not plan it. She felt the chaos around her, the hatred and fear, and something inside her responded. The heat flooded through her body. White fur covered her skin. Her eyes blazed silver. She grew taller, stronger, more powerful than she had ever been before. Her howl silenced every voice in the chamber. The sound carried through the stone walls and echoed across the city outside. When she spoke, her voice was not entirely human anymore. It was deeper, older, carrying the weight of ancestors she had never known. She said she had not asked for this power. She had not wanted to become a symbol for either species. She had been forced into a ring and made to fight, for the amusement of people who thought she was less than nothing. But she survived. She awoke, and now she stood before them with the truth that their ancestors had tried to bury. Humans and Lycans were family. They could continue to kill each other over a lie, or they could accept the truth and build something new. She looked at Tyrus. She said she could smell his fear. She said he was afraid because she represented the end of everything that had given his life meaning. He had built his identity on the belief that he was superior. Without that belief, he had nothing. She said she was giving him a choice. Accept the truth and live in a new world, or challenge her and die in the old one. Tyrus drew his blade. The fight lasted less than a minute. Elena moved like lightning, her claws tearing through his defenses. She did not kill him. When it was over, she stood with her foot on his chest, her claws at his throat, and gave him the mercy he had never shown to any human. She let him live. She stepped back and let her transformation fade. She became Elena again, small and tired and shaking with exhaustion. But the message had been delivered. The prophecy was real. The white Lycan had risen, and anyone who wanted to challenge that would have to go through her. High Mother Vera spoke into the silence. She said the council would vote on the question of peace with humanity. Those in favor should stand. Zara Nightshade stood first. She had tracked Elena across the galaxy and watched her every move. She knew what Elena was capable of, and more importantly, she knew what Elena was not. She was not a conqueror. She was not a tyrant. She was simply someone who wanted the killing to stop. Other council members followed. Some stood quickly, their minds already made. Others hesitated before rising. A few remained seated, their faces hard with refusal. But when the count was done, the majority had chosen peace. Kale rose from his throne. He walked down the steps and stood before Elena in front of the entire council. He said that for 1,000 years, the Lycan Dominion had defined strength as the ability to destroy. They had believed that power meant conquest. He said Elena had shown them a different kind of strength. The strength to survive. The strength to forgive. The strength to build instead of destroy. He reached out his hand to her. Not as a king to a subject, but as an equal to an equal. Elena looked at his hand. She thought about everything she had lost. Her ship, her crewmates, her old life. She thought about the humans still in chains across Lycan space. She took his hand. The treaty was signed 3 months later, on the anniversary of Elena's transformation. It was not perfect. Too many old wounds remained. Too many people on both sides refused to accept the new reality. But it was a beginning. Humans were freed across the Dominion. Ships were returned. Reparations were promised. Joint councils were formed to manage the transition. Marcus Vane led a new peacekeeping force made up of both species, working together for the first time in history. Elena became known as the White Bridge. She traveled between worlds, solving disputes, calming fears, reminding everyone why they had chosen peace over war. Syrah became her closest advisor, the person she trusted more than anyone else. And Kale. Their relationship was complicated. He had been responsible for so much suffering. She could not forget that, no matter how much he tried to make amends. But she also saw the man he was trying to become. She saw the courage it took for someone who had lived for 5 centuries to admit he had been wrong. They worked together. They argued. They challenged each other. Slowly, something grew between them that neither had expected. One night, a year after the treaty, Elena stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Twin moons hung in the sky, casting silver light across the towers and streets. Somewhere out there, humans and Lycans were learning to live together. Kale joined her. He did not speak. He simply stood beside her and watched the moons. Elena thought about the fighting pit where her journey had begun. She had been thrown into the dirt, bleeding and broken, while thousands of voices laughed at her weakness. Now she stood at the center of an empire, and the most powerful Lycan alive stood at her side. By choice, she had been humiliated. She had been awakened. And she had won. The story of Elena Grayson would be told for generations. It would grow and change and become legend. Future children would hear about the human woman who became a white wolf and ended a 1,000-year war. But Elena did not care about legends. She cared about the humans who were finally free. She cared about the Lycans who were finally learning that strength did not require cruelty. She cared about the future they were